He is one of the greatest of the Maiar. He was obsessed with order and power. He was swayed to the side of Melkor. But what did he do before he tried to take over Middle-earth himself? Hello and welcome to The Broken Sword. Today we look at just what Sauron was doing during the First Age.
Build me a army worthy of Mordor.
Sauron was a very talented Maiar, and he existed before the moment of the music of the Ainur. He came to a powerful position under the leadership of the greatest of the Ainur, Melkor. However, this was not a position of light and good. It was a position that went against the thoughts of the one true creator, Arrival of Luthien. He was even given the name of Gorthaur the Cruel for the acts he committed under Melkor's name. This means that despite not being the main Dark Lord himself at the time, he still played an important role within the First Age of Middle-earth. However, there was also a time before the First Age, so I feel that it is worth a quick summary of the beginnings before delving deeper into the First Age itself. So let us start with a look at the Silmarillion and those who served and were corrupted by Melkor. Among those of his servants that have names, the greatest was the spirit of whom the Eldar called Sauron, or Gorthaur the Cruel. In the beginning he was of the Maiar of Aule, and he remained mighty in the law of that people. In all deeds of Melkor then Morgoth upon Arda, in his vast works and in the deceits of his cunning, Sauron had a part, and was only less evil than his master in that for long he served another and not himself. But in after years he rose like a shadow of Morgoth and a ghost of his malice, and walked behind him on the same ruinous path down into the void. So we can see how originally Sauron served under Aule the Smith, the Valar who was concerned with rock and metals and the works of craft, which explains a lot about his knowledge and ability in forging powerful rings later in the Second Age. Sauron in these early times went commonly by the name of Mairon, at least before falling to the ways of Melkor, and when he was Mairon, he was considered the greatest smith there was, except solely for Aule himself. Mightily high praise to be given. A big thing that made Mairon the being he was came from his beliefs. He held a strong belief in the order of how things should be run, and this meant he also had a great dislike for any chaos. If he had stayed on the path of good, he could have been one of the greatest and an immense help to all things. But no, he chose the path that challenged everything, questioned everything, and not for the good of just progress, but for the purpose of just thinking that he knew better. This is where Melkor began to catch his gaze. He began to admire this valor, and Melkor would very much trust him too. As he was turned, this is where he gained his new name. The name of Gorthaur was placed upon him. Gorthaur the Cruel. So with that background now covered of his earlier years and the being that he is, let us go almost up to the beginning of the First Age and see just what Sauron was up to. Melkor had entered into Middle-earth and had created his great fortress of Angband in the northwestern lands, and this is where Sauron, labelled as a lieutenant of Melkor, was located. However, when Melkor was captured at the climax of the Battle of the Powers, the Valar searched his fortress, but when they searched this great stronghold, Sauron could not be found. He had escaped and hidden himself away, watching, waiting, planning for the return of his master. While Melkor was trapped and chained, Sauron did continue in his vision though. After the awakening of the elves, Sauron caused problems for those elves that took on the Great March, which is the journey the elves that were known as the Eldar took to travel from their place of awakening being far in the east of Middle-earth all the way to Valinor. Some had made to stop in the Vales of Anduin, but because of Sauron, they would not linger here and so had to continue their journey. Now, we finally reach the First Age itself. The sun and moon have risen for the first time. The second children of Ilúvatar have awoke, which led to Morgoth secretly leaving his stronghold of Angband to try and corrupt them to bend to his will. But it was said afterwards among the Eldar that when men awoke in Hildorian, at the rising of the sun, the spies of Morgoth were watchful, and tidings were soon brought to him. And this seemed to him so great a matter that secretly under shadow he himself departed from Angband, and went forth into Middle-earth, leaving to Sauron the command of the war. There is not really much of note of Sauron's actions early on, but after a few hundred years and the fall of Fingolfin at the hands of Morgoth, Sauron launches an attack in the year 457 of the First Age. His plan is to take Tol Sirion, which is an island in the middle of the Pass of Sirion between the Eredwethren and Dorthonion. It would be Orodreth, a lord of the Noldor and a member of the House of Finarfin, who would be here at the time of the attack, and he and his people were simply engulfed by fear. Sauron, greatest and most terrible of the servants of Morgoth, who in the Sindarin tongue was named Gorthaur, came against Orodreth, the warden of the tower upon Tol Sirion. Sauron was become now a sorcerer of dreadful power, master of shadows and of phantoms, foul in wisdom, cruel in strength, misshaping what he touched, twisting what he wrought, lord of werewolves. His dominion was torment. He took Minas Tirith by assault, for a dark cloud of fear fell upon those that defended it, and Orodreth was driven out and fled to Nargothrond. Then Sauron made it into a watchtower for Morgoth, a stronghold of evil and a menace, and the fair isle of Tol Sirion became accursed, and it was called Tol in Gawahoth, the Isle of Werewolves. No living creature could pass through that veil that Sauron did not espy from the tower where he sat, and Morgoth held now the western pass, and his terror filled the fields and woods of Beleriand. Sauron had completed a great task for Morgoth here. They now held a very strong position from the Isle of Werewolves, and Sauron grew ever more powerful alongside of Morgoth. With this added trust, Morgoth gave Sauron an important task next. In the following years after the taking of Tol in Gawahoth, the man Barahir, heir to the House of Beor and father of Beren of the story of Beren and Luthien, would be causing problems. Morgoth ordered Sauron to kill this man and wipe out the nuisance that he had become. Sauron showed his cunning when taking this task, for in the year 460 his soldiers managed to capture one of Barahir's companions, a man named Gorlim, and Sauron played Gorlim. Under the pressure of Sauron's eyes, Gorlim fell for Sauron's lies, for Sauron had promised to free not just him, but also his wife, Eilina, if he would reveal Barahir's location, and Gorlim revealed everything he knew. However, Sauron had no intentions on ever holding up his end of the bargain, as, for one, his wife was already dead, and so Gorlim too was murdered. It is no real surprise that a being such as Sauron would commit an act like this, but it really does show his true nature. And from here, Sauron would waste no time in having his forces sent to Ailuin, the clear blue mountain lake in eastern Dorthonion, which is where Barahir and his people had been hiding, and so he had every single one of them slain. This action would cause some problems for Sauron in the future though, and this all came from Beren, the son of Barahir, not being with the rest of his people at the time of their deaths. Beren had sworn to avenge his father for what Gorlim had done, and with a stout heart, he immediately found the orcs that had killed his father and made sure none of them were left alive. In fact, it is from this that Beren recovers the Ring of Barahir, being the same ring that gets passed down through the ages, even reaching the finger of Aragorn in the Third Age. Beren would grow a name for himself, and in time he grew too much of a name to be ignored. And so, Morgoth told Sauron to finish the job, kill the rest of the family, kill this Beren. Sauron would send all sorts of his followers to find this man. Orcs, werewolves, fell beasts, but none could find him, or at least, none could live to reveal that they had. So you may be wondering now, how would Sauron come to find Beren? Well, Beren would in fact bring himself to Sauron, along with Finrod Felagund, the brother of Galadriel, and 10 other companions. On an evening of autumn, Felagund and Beren set out from Nargothrond with their 10 companions, and they journeyed beside Narok to his source in the Falls of Ivrin. Beneath the shadowy mountains they came upon a company of orcs, and slew them all in their camp by night, and they took their gear and their weapons. By the arts of Felagund their own forms and faces were changed into the likeness of orcs, and thus disguised they came far upon their northward road, and ventured into the western pass, between Eredwethrin and the highlands of Taur-nu-Fuin. But Sauron in his tower was ware of them, and doubt took him, for they went in haste, and stayed not to report their deeds, as was commanded to all the servants of Morgoth that passed that way. Therefore he sent to waylay them, and bring them before him. Thus befell the contest of Sauron and Felagund, which is renowned, for Felagund strove with Sauron in songs of power, as the power of the king was very great. But Sauron had the mastery, as is told in the Lay of Luthien. Now I will not read the entire Lay of Luthien, as it is not entirely relevant to this video, but it tells the tale of Beren and Luthien. But from here, with their orc disguises now stripped, they were thrown into a dungeon. Each companion, one by one, was devoured by a werewolf, yet none would give up the meaning of their presence to Sauron. Eventually, every companion was gone, and only Finrod and Beren were the ones remaining. The next to be attacked was Beren. However, when the werewolf went for Beren, Finrod stepped in. Sauron had intended to leave Finrod until the last, as he thought he was one of the great Noldor, and therefore held the secret as to why they were truly there. Finrod used all his power and managed to bring down the beast, but this was to a great sacrifice. Finrod was mortally wounded and would not survive for much time at all. Sauron felt he was close now. Only Beren remained. Sauron had not known the names of all these people, but surely with just one left now, he would break. Another moment happened now that Sauron could not predict. Luthien appeared upon the bridge of Tol Sirion and sang a song. Sauron instantly knew who this woman was. There was no doubt this was the well-known daughter of Melian the Maiar and Thingol, Lord of Doriath. This even made Sauron smile despite his black thoughts, as he knew if he handed her over to Morgoth, he would be well rewarded. However, she was not alone, as she had arrived with Huan, the Hound of Valinor, one of the hunting dogs of the Valar Arome, the Hunter. Therefore, he sent a wolf to the bridge, but Huan slew it silently. Still, Sauron sent others, one by one, and one by one, Huan took them by the throat and slew them. Then Sauron sent Draugluin, a dread beast, old and evil lord and sire of the werewolves of Angband. His might was great, and the battle of Huan and Draugluin was long and fierce. Yet at length Draugluin escaped, and fleeing back into the tower, he died before Sauron's feet. And as he died, he told his master, "Huan is there." Now Sauron knew well, as did all in that land, the fate that was decreed for the Hound of Valinor, and it came into his thought that he himself would accomplish it. Therefore, he took upon himself the form of a werewolf, and made himself the mightiest that had yet walked the world, and he came forth to win the passage of the bridge. Sauron, having lost his greatest werewolf Draugluin, took werewolf form himself and arrived on the bridge. The terror that fills even Huan from the appearance of Sauron was so great that even the great hound recoiled. Not just this, but his aura caused weakness to Luthien as well. However, she drew up what power she could muster, and using her magic, caused fatigue and blindness to affect Sauron. Sauron and Huan fought. It was a bloody, vicious and long battle, but Sauron could not come out on top. Sauron knew he had to think smarter here, as he became caught in Huan's jaw and he could not break free. He tried changing his form to that of a giant serpent instead, but still he remained stuck. So now he took on his truer form, no longer one of a beast. But no wizardry nor spell, neither fang nor venom, nor devil's art nor beast strength could overthrow Huan without forsaking his body utterly. Ere his foul spirit left its dark house, Luthien came to him, ghost be sent quaking back to Morgoth. And she said, "There everlastingly thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower." Then Sauron yielded himself, and Luthien took the mastery of the isle and all that was there, and Huan released him. And immediately he took the form of a vampire, great as a dark cloud across the moon, and he fled, dripping blood from his throat upon the trees, and came to Taur-nu-Fuin, and dwelt there, filling it with horror. Taur-nu-Fuin was a forest located in the south of Dorthonion, and while Sauron was here, it was a place filled with darkness, horror, and death. A wounded and embarrassed Sauron meant dreadful things. As for the Isle of Werewolves, though, Luthien had thrown down the gates with her power, and she released all prisoners that had been chained in the dungeons and the darkness of Sauron. Luthien saved Beren, recovered Finrod's body, and once all prisoners were free, she reduced this Minas Tirith to rubble. The island would be peaceful until Morgoth would retake it after the Nenaath Anodiat. Now, what did Sauron do for the rest of the First Age? Well, to be honest, not a lot from what we know. We could guess that he remained in Taur-nu-Fuin for the remaining years until Morgoth's downfall after the War of Wrath. After Thangorodrim was destroyed, he would reappear in his fair form and go back to the Valar, repenting his actions. In response though, Eonwë, the Herald of Manwë and chief of the Maiar, ordered Sauron to return to Valinor itself to receive judgment from the hand of Manwë. Sauron would have no intention on making such a journey. Instead, he would run the other way and go hide in Middle-earth for many, many years. And that is when the First Age would end and the Second Age would begin. So if you would like to see the adventures of Sauron in the Second Age, please go and check out our video on that. And so there we have it, the story of Sauron in the First Age. Back during the times that Sauron was not the main threat to Middle-earth, he was second in command to Melkor. He was considered the greatest Maiar by many, but he had his eyes turned by one of the Valar not to follow Eru's ways. He became very good at hiding himself away when things went badly, and he was able to bide his time before choosing the right moments to return. He would be responsible for the deaths of many greats like that of Barahir or Finrod. Even if we're not talking directly about making the killing blows, these things could not have happened without his ruling. If Sauron had not been at Morgoth's side, he would have found it a lot harder to be as successful as he had been. It cannot be understated just how powerful a being Sauron really was. In fact, some people have tried to argue that he could have even been greater than Morgoth. Now, of course, I'm not saying more powerful directly as a sole being, but greater overall. However, that is very much an idea for another video, another day. So with that, now it is time for my question of the day, which is, do you want to see this same style video on Sauron covering the Third Age in the future? I've now covered the First and Second Ages, of course touching a bit on the time before the First Age in this video as well, so would you like me to finish off the trilogy by covering the Third Age? Let me know all of your thoughts on this or any other videos you may prefer instead in the comment section below. And now it's time to shout out our patrons. You guys are the ones letting us make our short film in the background of all things, and I cannot thank you all enough. Firstly, we have our Divine Power tier members of Kevin and Abram, you are both awesome, and a big thanks to our Fire Demon tier members of Nashith, Denversteel and Gregory, you are amazing people, and as well I cannot forget the Wizard Staff tier members of John, Andrew and Jennifer. You are all true legends of the Brohirrim. And finally, if you have managed to reach the very end of this video with me today and you have enjoyed what you've seen, please consider hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon with all notifications ticked so that you'll be notified of all future uploads, or maybe just dropping a like or a share of the video as well. Any of these things massively help out the channel. And so, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.